Hi everyone, welcome back to your journey to know more about AWS. We have covered AWS VPC as well as NAT Gateway in our previous two videos. And to understand VPC endpoints, you need to know about the VPC as well as the VPC NAT Gateway. If you have not seen those videos, I would rather recommend please go through those videos and then come back on this VPC endpoint video so that you can understand why we are using it and what is the purpose of it. I would be providing link below in the description for both of the videos which you can go through. So let's move ahead with the endpoint tutorial. So what is a VPC endpoint? A VPC endpoint enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS services. So what does it mean, guys? If you remember, in our NAT gateway video, we created a NAT gateway in our public subnet so that the EC2 instances in a private subnet can access the internet. When it comes to AWS other services like S3, DynamoDB, if my private instance need to use or consume those services with a NAT gateway kind of an arrangement, the traffic has to traverse through NAT gateway to the internet and come back to the AWS services. If you look from the from look if you look at it, it is a question of a performance as well as security when your traffic which has to use an internal service needs to go out to the internet and come back to the destination which is an internal service. So to avoid this or to uh, fill that loophole, AWS has provided a service called VPC Endpoint, which enables you to privately connect your VPC resources or your private subnet resources to the supported AWS services. Now, when you have an VPC endpoints, then your VPC resources and your VPC do not require public IP addresses to communicate with the resource in the service. So what does it mean? If you look at the NAT gateway, when my EC2 instance in the private subnet was reaching to AWS S3, it would use the elastic IP which was issued to the NAT gateway. But in case of an endpoint, the EC2 instance will use the private IP which has been assigned to it from the range which I have provided for the private subnet, and the same private IP would be used as a source to access those services or the supported services in AWS. Now the question comes, how many types do we have? So as of now, AWS has two types of endpoints. One is an interface endpoint and the other one is a gateway endpoints. Today also we are going to talk about gateway endpoints, but it is good to know about the interface endpoints as well, which I'll be covering in a different video. So what is an interface endpoint? So interface endpoints, as the name suggests, is an elastic network interface within your private subnet which consumes your private IP address, and it serves as an entry point for traffic destined for a supported AWS service. So it would be acting as an entry point to the traffic, while a gateway endpoint is a gateway which will act as a target for a specified route in your route table used for the traffic destined to the supported AWS services. So what are the supported AWS services? When we talk about VPC Gateway Endpoint, the supported AWS service as of now is AWS S3, that is your storage, and AWS DynamoDB. Later on might be more services might be covered, but at this point of time these are the services which are covered through gateway endpoints. Now you need to understand your endpoints are supported within the same region only. You cannot create an endpoint between a VPC and a service which is in a different region. So I think this is enough for the introduction part. Let's go and see it in action. So this is an arrangement. If you look at this diagram, I have tried to depict here how the traffic will go when I'm using NAT gateway to access my S3 bucket which is in the same region. Now my private EC2 instance which is in the private subnet will reach to the NAT gateway through this route table which has a route out to the NAT gateway, and then NAT gateway with its public elastic IP address will take the traffic further to the S3 bucket through the internet. So that's a kind of a wastage of internet traffic, as well as it will have performance as well as the security issues. So let's log into my AWS console and see things in action. So this is my management console. So let's go to the EC2 instances. I'll give a brief description about the resources I have for the demonstration. So I have got two different servers. One is in public subnet and one is a private subnet, as you can see in the diagram. So if you look at, there's a EC2 instance in the public subnet and there's an EC2 instance in the private subnet. So I'm going to log into the public server through SSH, and from there I'll SSH to my private instance to check how things work when there's a NAT gateway in the picture. So let's copy the IP address, SSH, copy and paste, change the port number. Port number is 22. Let's go to SSH, and guys, today I'm gonna show you how you can log into your private subnet EC2 instances from the public subnet EC2 instances without saving your keys onto the publicly accessible jump box or the Bastion server. So it is very important for the security perspective that you should not be storing your keys on a server which is accessed through internet. So what I'll do is I'll be using PAGEANT, and I'll allow agent forwarding. So I'll show you where the PAGEANT is. If you go through PAGEANT runs as a service, Windows service, double click it and save your key here, close it, come back here, put those IP address and the port number, come on the SSH and auth tab, click allow agent forwarding. Need not to go and browse for your private key, open it. So it will ask for the username. My username is ec2-user, enter. So you can see it has logged in without the storing the public private key in my SSH tool. Now from here I will go and SSH my private instance. So what is the IP of my private instance? If you go and check here, this is the private IP. So this is the IP 10.02.2.175. Go back to SSH, ec2-user, IP here, sorry. So this is my IP. Now you see I need not to save my private key on my publicly accessible web server or the Bastion server or the jump box which I have. Now you can see, if you look at the IP, and here it will show that I have logged into my EC2 instance which is in private subnet. Let me clear the screen. So from here, now please remember I have a NAT gateway, and every traffic which is not destined for the local destination, it will go out to the internet through NAT gateways. Let's check it here. Go to VPC, and where is my NAT gateway? I will show you the NAT gateway here. So this is the NAT gateway I have, which was created during the previous. This is my NAT gateway, and if you come back here, let's go back to services, EC2, and from the EC2, if I go to the private instance which I have, so this is my private instance and this is my so from private instance, if any traffic which is not destined for the local host, it will go out to the internet through NAT gateway. Let's go back to the private instance. If I try to invoke any S3 CLI commands, so it will go to the NAT gateway and then it will come back to the S3. So if I go and just want to list my buckets, it will not work here. It says that unable to locate credentials because I have not provided any credentials to connect to my AWS S3. So now what I'll do is I will not provide the credentials, but I have a role which has been created for this purpose, and I will go and attach that role to private instance. For just information purpose, now you can attach or detach an IAM role on a running instance. If you go to instance settings, attach and replace IAM role, you can attach and replace IAM role. If you click here, I have got an S3 full admin role. Just for this demonstration purpose, I'll apply it and close it. I come back on my PuTTY terminal and I run the same command. So if you see, I have got three different buckets which are accessible through NAT gateway as of now. It means when I run that command, this traffic goes to NAT gateway, goes to internet, and come back to the Amazon services. Now I need to change this arrangement. I want to use VPC endpoint instead of NAT gateway. So I'll do one thing. I'll go into my VPC console. Let's go to VPC. So there are two ways. Either I can delete my NAT gateway, or I can change the route table which has a route out to NAT gateway, and then we can come and check. So this is my route or route table which has been associated with my private subnet, and through which, if you look at the routes, you'll see there is a route out to the NAT gateway. So what we can do is edit the routes. I'll remove this route to NAT gateway, so that is effectively stop sending anything to the NAT gateway. Save routes, come back to the command SSH, run the same command, and you'll see it will not work this time because I have removed the route out to the NAT gateway. It will not work, it will time out. So here you can see it's not working. I'll go back. So this is how things were working when there was a NAT gateway. Now as we are talking about VPC endpoint, so let's go back to a PowerPoint and see what happens when we have a VPC endpoint. So this was the arrangement earlier. Now we need to provide an endpoint gateway so that the traffic again can flow to the AWS services which is within the AWS network. So what I'll do is I'll put an endpoint gateway. That endpoint gateway would be provisioned in my custom VPC which I have here, and then the route out for the private subnet should be given to this particular gateway, and now the gateway will take my traffic to the S3 bucket, but it will not traverse through internet. So that would add to your performance, security, as well as there are charges attached to use your NAT gateway, so you can avoid that as well. So let's go back to the AWS console again. So here we are. Now we'll create a endpoints. So this is the endpoint console. It's a very straightforward kind of a configuration. You click on create endpoint. So if you look at it here, when you want to create endpoint, you have three different service categories. One is AWS services, which is currently listed. Then you can find the services by name. You cannot see your service here, or if you want, you can use your AWS marketplace services as well to connect to an VPC endpoint. But this can be done only through an interface gateway at this point of time. For gateway endpoints, which we are discussing now, there are only at this point of time there are only two services which is currently supported, that is your S3 as well as DynamoDB. And how you can find out, if you look at this column titled as type, look at here, you will see this all these services, all these service names or the endpoints are interface endpoints, while this one, that is your DynamoDB one, that has a gateway endpoint. And if you look at it here, let's go down and find out the S3 which we're trying to do here. So here this one is S3 gateway. Other than these two, all are interface endpoints, not the gateway endpoints, right? So we need to create a gateway endpoint for Amazon S3 to access our S3 bucket. So we'll select this one, we'll come here and we'll select our custom VPC which we have created. Guys, please remember, if you have not seen the VPC video, please go back and look at the VPC so that you can understand this topic fully. And I have already provided the links to both of the topics which are needed to understand VPC endpoints in the description below. So I have selected the test VPC here, which was the custom VPC for us. Now I need to select which route table will have route out to this endpoint gateway. So this is my private endpoint, and and this is what I want. My private EC2 instances should go out to AWS S3 using this endpoint. So I'll do one thing. I'll select this route table. You can select both as well if you want, that there should be route out to both of the subnets or both of the route tables. Currently I'm selecting one. Now it will ask you to provide a policy. Here you can provide the full access, which allows access by any user or service within the VPC, or you can have a custom access where you can generate your own policy as per the need and requirement. So I'll at this point for this demonstration I'll select full access and click on create endpoints. So this creates my endpoints. So it's very quick and fast. You can see it's already available. Now let's go back to the route table. If you guys remember, I have removed the route to NAT gateway, and let's see what happens now. So this is my private route table which I have selected for this VPC endpoints. Now if you look at it, a route out already has been inserted into my route table automatically with the creation of the VPC and gateway endpoints, and this is the service which we'll be using, and it normally contains the public IP addresses which are explicitly associated with my service. So this is the destination, this is the target, and this is the status of the route. So automatically a route has already been configured for us. Now let's go and check it back. Let's run same command for AWS access AWS S3 ls. Now you can see I can go and access my S3 list here. So the traffic from my private instance, as you can see this here, reaching to the AWS S3 without even the NAT gateway. So that's how we can configure a NAT gateway. Let's move on to some of the finer points. This was the diagram which we have referred now, which I used for the configuring it. Now if you can see, instead of NAT gateway, my traffic from the EC2 instance in private subnet is going through the endpoint gateway endpoint and reaches to the S3 bucket without even reaching to the internet. So that's how you do it, guys. Moving ahead, there are certain limitations from the gateway endpoints or endpoints as of now from AWS. The first of it, that you can use endpoints at this point of time supports only IP version 4 traffic. So not for the IP version 6. You cannot transfer an endpoint from one VPC to another, so it has to be used within the same VPC. Endpoints are supported within the same region only. You cannot use your endpoints to access a service which is in a different region. You cannot explicitly add, delete, modify an endpoint route in your route table by using route table APIs or route table pages in AWS console. So to do that, you need to modify the endpoint. So let's go and have a look at this. Let me take you again to the endpoints. If I go and check my route table where this route was automatically inserted by the creation of endpoints, this is my route table, and that's why I wanted to show you something here. This is my private route, these are the routes. If you see, and I could add, this was the route which was inserted with the creation of the endpoints. If I go and edit route points, I cannot change it, I cannot delete it, I cannot modify it. This can be done only with the modification of the endpoints. So that's what the last limitation was all about. That's it, guys. That's it from my end. So this covers the gateway endpoints. If you like the video, please subscribe and comment. And for more such videos and related information, you can please visit to my website www.becloudguru.com. Thanks for watching, guys.